Now, this is not new in any way, shape, or form, as I'm sure everyone listening to this will be well aware. You've got loads and loads of examples. I've just pulled a few out. So one of them was this in 2018, where the University of Texas in Austin declared that masculinity was a mental health crisis, and they wanted to develop a healthy model of masculinity. And it was a critique of restrictive masculinity, which is a good start because at least they can acknowledge that not all masculinity is evil and there is something that is a healthy masculinity. However, a leftist is going to try and define it, which I don't trust in the slightest, but at least they accept that there is something there. But it's as cringe as you expect, where they're just like, oh God, masculinity is difficult and it's essentially oppressive. And it's like, yeah. It can hurt boys, in fact, if we can.
Well, you're just like, yeah, good.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be oppressed. Do you know why? Because you're not good enough in your current state. No one is good enough in their current state. You, listening to this now, you're not good enough. Go and lift some weights. Go and get to work. Go and do something productive. And tomorrow, you'll be better than you were today. And take the same attitude the next day and the next day and the next day. And in 10 years' time, you'll look back and go, wow, I'm actually a lot stronger and smarter and fitter and more sensible and more accomplished than I was back then. Because back then, like I said, you are not good enough. This is the essence of masculinity. Improve thyself, right? And this attitude apparently hurts boys. Like, yeah, good. Because if we don't, they might end up turning into cat boys, and I'm not accepting it.
They might not turn into men.
Exactly. Men are not born, they are made, right? But anyway, this was traditional masculinity can hurt boys, said the American Psychological Association. Yeah, hopefully. It did not have a guide for working with males, in part because they were historically considered the norm, and so it proved its first official set of guidelines. And they said that men who are socialized to conform to traditional masculinity ideology are often negatively affected in terms of mental and physical health. Yeah, right. It's being men and being respected as men that's hurting them. It's not saying that men are bad, and by the way, you're a man, by the way, so you're bad. It's that. That's what it is, right? And they acknowledge that ideas they vary across cultures and age groups, but they point to common themes like anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. Yeah, sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah, John's cheering in the corner. Yeah, come on, let's do this. Adventure, risk, and violence. That sounds like a good time, to be honest. But this basically has enabled the left to. And as Vice magazine have shown us here, say that all masculinity is toxic. There we go. That's where we wanted to get to. Thank you, left-wingers. It's not that there's a good masculinity. It's not that there's a bad masculinity. No, it's all toxic. Why? Because it produces, competent achievers who like doing things and are not afraid of the world. And if you're strong, then what use do you have for leftist ideology? Not much, actually. But yeah, so this was obviously... written by a very manly man called Wilbert Cooper, who says, it seems like manhood is being redefined. The push could be the response to our abuses revealed by the Me Too movement. Ah, yes. Every man is basically... Well, they heard about the Me Too movement and thought, oh, God, that represents me. Not, that represents Hollywood, Anyway. But anyway, he goes on, blah, 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 right? Conservative critics use of the term bemoan its use because they believe it unfairly implicates all men and worry about those who are using it are waging a subversive war on masculinity as a whole. Well, it seems that they're correct then, doesn't it? I mean, it does seem to be a subversive war on masculinity as a whole that is being waged by the left.
That's not subversive. They're doing it in public.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be subversive, and then you started publishing articles saying all masculinity is toxic. Of course, most think peace writers, activists, academics who employ toxic masculinity go out of the way to clarify their intention is not to castigate all representations of manhood, just to reform the bad. The Trumpy parts. As Salon's Amanda Marcotte pointed out, and I love Amanda Marcotte, the modifier toxic inherently suggests that there are some forms of masculinity that are not toxic. So I was surprised and intrigued when I came across the powerful ideas of John Stoltenberg. Do you know who John Stoltenberg was? Or is?
You tell me.
Andrea Dworkin's husband. Do you know who Andrea Dworkin is?
That rings a bell, though.
Oh, yeah. She's one of the prime movers of the original sort of feminist man-hating movement, where she, I believe, was one of the first feminists to say that all intercourse is rape.
Sounds feminist.
Yep. Very feminist. I love the way this is written. whose theories, his theories, Stoltenberg's theories, epitomize they kind of epitomize the fears of paranoid conservatives and undercut the more tepid critiques of machismo made by my fellow SJWs. In the past, the prominent feminist scholar has openly equated the idea of healthy masculinity with the oxymoron of healthy cancer, because he sees manhood as an identity built entirely out of oppression. Yes! You oppress yourself so you're not weak and useless. Any other questions, Mr. Stoltenberg? Before I have to start bullying you too. But the interesting thing about this, right, is we've come to the point now. So we've pathologized and demonized masculinity. Masculinity is oppressive, it's evil, and apparently it drives violent extremism, not ideology. According to the Washington Post's review of a chap called Michael Kimmel's new book, when it was new when this came out, I don't remember what the date was. It wasn't too long ago though. Healing from Hate: How Young Men Get Into and Out of Violent Extremism. The book's about young men who find purpose in the unlikeliest of places. If you've ever wondered why nearly all the people you read about who are joining the Islamic State or neo-Nazi groups or the white nationalist alt-right are men, Kimmel contends it's no coincidence. He believes that gender, specifically masculinity, is both the psychological inspiration that sends young men into these groups and the social glue that keeps them involved. He says, to a man, the ex-Nazis, jihadists and white supremacists felt like failures as men, but instead of turning that sense of emasculation inward towards depression, interpersonal violence, suicide, or self-medication through drugs and alcohol, these young men were somehow convinced to externalize their sense of emasculation, turn it into righteous political rage, and lash out at those forces that they came to believe were responsible for their emasculation. The failure was not theirs as individuals, it was something done to them by a host of others. Well, I mean, you've literally just gone, well, it was subversive in the previous articles. Masculinity's bad, it hurts people, and we need to get rid of it, it's all toxic. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you seem to have created the narrative they have picked up and run with, right? And so what does this mean? This means that articles like this one from Vice, straight guys, here's why you should give pegging a chance. Up for that, are you, Callum?
I'll pass.
Pass. Yep. Or the next one, which is straight people don't exist, of course. It's fluid for women, but men apparently, I mean, I love the way they've got you here, right? Do you know how you know you're not straight, Callum? We show straight men a picture of a woman masturbating and they respond like a straight guy. But when you also show them a picture of a guy masturbating and their eyes dilate a little bit, so we're actually able to show you're gay.
Okay.
Ironically, that's their argument, right? Your eyes
I wonder
dilate.
what happens when you show a gay man a woman masturbating.
Ah, you're straight. Gotcha. But they say there are aspects of male sexuality along the continuum, just as we have always recognised with women. Men have gotten so much crap, cultural crap put on them, that even if a man does have some sexual attraction to guys, they would never say it. Yeah, right. Maybe 50 years ago, but certainly not now. This next one is an example of how masculinity has been modified, shall we say? Perhaps subverted, we could also say. This is, of course, some singer called Harry Styles, who had a Vogue cover in a dress, and conservatives were outraged. And it's like, well, they are outraged for a reason. It looks like your demasculinization is creating Nazis, at least by Mr. Kimmel's.
I mean, your own research.
Yeah,
says this.
exactly.
So,
Mr. Kimmel's research has shown that the attacks on masculinity are unironically creating Nazis and jihadists. So maybe there could be a form of healthy masculinity that means we can prevent this from happening. Because I don't want people to become Nazis or jihadists. I also don't want communists to continually attack the concept of being a man. Anyway, this, I think, has really sunk in to Generation Z. We can see from the embarrassing cat boys on the internet and also people on TikTok. This is from the New York Times. Everyone is gay on TikTok, apparently. Huh, that's good. So they feature Connor Robinson, a 17-year-old British TikTok star who has been producing videos on TikTok that set to a lewd hip-hop video by him and a fellow teenage boy called Elijah, who they video themselves doing some grinding session and make-out session or whatever, which gets millions and millions of views. But the thing is, these two guys aren't gay. They're just doing it because it gets the views and because it gets promoted in the New York Times. And they get told, oh yeah, what you're doing here is fantastic. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't care about people being gay or straight or anything like that. I'm not really that bothered.
but why are you pretending?
Yeah, but you're doing it because the culture has pushed you in that direction. This isn't the idea of the 17-year-old boy. This is the 17-year-old boy responding to the incentives that are around him. I mean, he's not gay. So it's like, just doing it for the money. Young men on TikTok feel free to push the envelope of homosocial behaviour because they've emerged in an era of declining cultural homophobia, even if they don't recognise it as such, says Eric Anderson, a professor of masculinity studies at the University of Winchester in England. By embracing a softer side of manliness, they are rebelling against what Mr. Anderson called the anti-gay, anti-feminine model attributed to the youth cultures of previous generations. So, against manliness and masculinity itself.
What a homophobic thing to say as well. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gay, you have to be feminine. You can't be masculine.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Absurd.
I never even thought about it like that. But that's a good point. Why can't gay men be masculine?
I mean, you've seen Douglas Murray's arms. He's been lifting. He's
He has.
doing good.
Yeah. But the interesting thing as well, it's like, why would gay men be attracted to feminine men? Wouldn't gay men be like, I'm into the macho Douglas Murray types?
Depends on the man.
I guess so. I guess it does. But yeah, so this has led us to the point where it becomes political, because it turns out that weak men are likely to be socialists. Are you surprised? Not really.
No.
Because
But there's a reason this is all getting labelled cultural Marxism, and the folks who are trying to masculinize men are cultural conservatives, pushing cultural conservatism. I love how on Wikipedia as well, if you look up cultural Marxism, first line, far-right conspiracy theory, look up cultural conservatism. No, it's just a movement to try and make people more conservative. It's like,
Well, there we go. But what the funny thing about this is, like, like they've got a poster of Stalin there, and it's like, I mean, Stalin is like the manliest man who's ever manned, right? I mean, look at him. He looks very masculine. Right, there's no doubting, but
I don't really think a thug is a good man, to be honest.
I'm not saying he's a good man. I'm saying
No, he's a man, like a proper man.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's good as a man. I'm saying that he has the aesthetics of a man. He looks masculine, right? He doesn't look like a wimpy leftist. But anyway, as the Atlantic say, if you're a free market enthusiast, it may be satisfying to think of men who tweet Bernie would have won as wimpy weaklings. But is it true? Yes, it's true. It's absolutely true. And they've been complaining about this for some time. A study was recently published in the Journal of Evolution and Human Behavior, where they recruited 171 men, measured their shoulders, chest, and flex biceps. The men were then asked to squeeze a dynamometer to measure their grip strength, and they also gauged how the men valued redistributive economic policies, because they agreed on statements like high incomes should be taxed more than others, blah, blah, blah. And they obviously found that the stronger men didn't want redistribution, and the weaker men did. And
There are a bunch of studies on this. Like, if you're a gym
there
bro,
are.
you're probably right wing.
There are
Shift
loads and loads of this, and there have also been not studies, but many cases of left wing women complaining that gym bro guys have been lying about being left wing in order to get some. This is something that's a common cultural phenomenon. They're angry. It's like, well, what are the alternatives? Well, the alternatives is to go for a man you can be sure is a genuine left-winger, like the Try Guys from BuzzFeed, who famously did a testosterone test. We can get that up, John? Possibly. Wasn't
this the embarrassing one where, like, all of them were lower than... What were they lower than?
Literally, the average testosterone score for men aged 25 to 34, which these chaps fell into, is 617 ng/dl.
The nanograms per deciliter?
Whatever, I don't know. But it doesn't matter, right? The 617 number is the important thing, and not one of the BuzzFeed beta men met the average. In fact, they all tested below the level of a typical 85-year-old, which is 376.
Fucking
So,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I recall looking at this back in the day. Some of them were on like 200 and something, and only one of them broke 300. But even then, it was still lower than the 85-year-old. Right. So, like,
They've got lower testosterone than an 85-year-old man.
Yes. And then when you look at them, you look at their features, and their features are very soft. They're very feminine, frankly. And so this continual sort of progression of masculinity bad, men bad. Let's emphasize femininity. Let's de-emphasize physical competition. All of these other things. Well, it seems that it has actually come to the point where left-wing men are actually quite demasculinized, and it seems to be like a generational thing, because like looking at the 17-year-olds and their thing, no, they look kind of effeminate to me, and so it's one of those things. It's like, look, you can see the actual the results of the ideology having worked its way through generations, and now it's left young men in a position where they're not very manly at all.